Chapter 6. Alchemists. Within the jade box, a green pill, about the size of a dragon's eye, laid quietly. The refreshing scent that had spread throughout the entire hall was emanating from the pill. In Docha mainland, to become a doji, one needs to be able to compress the qi within one's own body to a qi cyclone. But the process of compressing qi to become a qi cyclone has an extremely high failure rate. After failing, one's 9 duan qi would fall back to 8 duan. Some unlucky people need to compress their qi 10 or more times before they are successful in doing so. But by wasting so much time on the compression of qi, one would lose the best time to practice qi and thus destroy their future. Qi gathering power. Its use was to allow someone with 9 duan qi to have a 100% success rate when trying to compress one's qi. This effect makes many people red-eyed. After all, anyone that's not a doji is treated extremely badly. But qi gathering power isn't something made by nature, rather it was made by someone, alchemist. In Docha mainland, the sole profession that's more desirable than a doji are alchemists. Like the name suggests, alchemists are able to create special pills that raise one's strengths. Every free agent alchemist is sought after by many forces. The reason as to why alchemists have such a high position is because of how rare alchemists are and how strict the requirements to become an alchemist are. First of all, one must be of the fire attribute, and then, within the fire attribute, one must have a tiny sliver of the wood attribute to act as a catalysis in pill refining. In the Docha mainland, a person's attribute is determined by their soul. A soul since birth will only have one soul attribute and reject any other attribute. So it's impossible for a person to have 2 attributes. Of course, nothing is impossible. Within 1 million people, there will always be someone who has a mutated soul. Within these people that have mutated souls, some have the potential to become alchemists. However, a person that has the fire and wood attributes is not enough to become an alchemist. That's because one must also have a strong soul perception or soul molding. In the refinement of pills, the 3 most important requirements are the material, the flame, and one's soul perception. The material. They would have to be natural treasures. After all, even the best alchemists can't create a god-tier pill from trash material. Therefore, good base materials are very important for good pills. The flame, or the fire that's required when refining pills. The fire used in refining pills can't be normal flames, but rather, they must be docha flames, created though docha with a fire attribute. Of course, there are some extremely strong mutated flames in nature. Some strong alchemists would take these flames and use them to refine pills instead of their own docha flame. Not only do these mutated flames boost the success rate of the refinement, they also increase the effectiveness of the pills. Because refining pills is a gruesome task, extended periods of refinement requires a lot of docha, and because of that, every brilliant alchemist is also a strong fire-type doji. The final requirement is soul perception. When refining a pill, the intensity of the flame needs to be controlled with ridiculous precision. If the flame is slightly too hot, the pill within the furnace would be burned to ashes, wasting the time and effort of the alchemist. Therefore, controlling the intensity of the flame is a prerequisite to becoming an alchemist. But in order to have a control over the flames, one must have an incredible soul perception. Without soul perception, even if one meets or even exceeds the first 2 requirements, it would be pointless to try to refine pills. Under these strict conditions, the ones who have the qualifications to become an alchemist are few and rare. Because there aren't that many alchemists, the magical pills that they refine are also few and sparse. Since rare things are valuable and pills can definitely be defined as rare, alchemists all have an honorable, to an exaggerated extent, position. Within the main hall, with the gasps of the 3 elders, the younger generation all stare at the jade box in Jai's hands. Next to her father, Xiemia licks her red lips with her soft tongue and stares at the box, without blinking. Hehe, this was refined by our honorable elder Guhi. I think that everyone here has heard of his name, right? Looking at the embarrassing appearance of the 3 elders, Jai started becoming arrogant. This pill was refined by the pill king Guhi. Hearing Jai's words, the 3 elders once again embarrassed themselves. Pill King Guhi, an extremely influential alchemist within the Jiamor Empire. His alchemy is mysterious and unpredictable, causing countless different forces to try to fawn upon him. Not only does Gu He have extraordinary talent in alchemy. His own strength is at the level of a Do Wong and he's one of the top 10 dojas in Jiamor Empire. Refined by his hands, the Che gathering powder's value is probably exponentially higher than other normal Che gathering power. The three elders smile at the Che gathering powder within the jade box. If the Z clan gets this Che gathering powder, then the Z clan can probably develop another young doji. Right when the three elders were thinking about how to get the pill for their own grandsons, a young voice filled with fury resonates within the main hall. Mr. Jie, it would be better if you kept the pill. Your request, we might not accept it. The main hall fell silent and everyone's gaze turns upon the delicate face of Ziyan in the corner. Ziyan, you don't have the right to say anything right now. Be quiet. One of the elders' face became dark as he yells at Ziyan. Ziyao, be quiet. I know that you're not happy about this, but we'll decide what will happen. Another quite old elder said to Ziyan, three elders, if your sons or grandsons had their marriage released today, would you still be saying that? Ziyao slowly stands up. The edge of his mouth was curved upwards in ridicule. Since it was apparent that the three elders treated him with disdain, why should he be so respectful to them? You hearing Ziyan's words, the three elders couldn't find a way to argue against his words. The grumpy third elder even started materializing his Do Che in anger. Three elders, Ziyao Zheizhe isn't wrong. He's the victim of this, so you guys shouldn't decide for him. A clear girl's voice rang across the main hall. Hearing the girl's voice, the three elders' arrogance fell and after exchanging worried glances, they all nodded and sat back down. Looking at the three elders backing off, Ziyao turns his head back and deeply gazes at the smiling Zizana. Who are you? To be able to make the three elder fear you? Pressing down his confusion, Ziyao quickly walks up and respectfully bows to his father, Zizon. Afterwards, he turns around to face Naylan Yanran. Slowly letting a breath of air, he asks, Lady Naylan, I would like to ask a question. Your visit here today, to release the marriage, did grandfather Naylan give his consent? Before, when Ziyan came out from his corner, Naylan Yanran already felt uncomfortable with him. Now hearing his question, her brow scrunches up. This guy, at first I thought he was pretty nice, but he's actually extremely shameless. Does he not know the difference between the two of us? Criticizing Ziyan in her mind, Naylan Yanran never considered how releasing the marriage would put Ziyan and his father into an awkward and infuriating situation. Standing up and staring at the should-be husband of hers, Naylan Yanran says, Grandfather didn't give his consent, but this is my own problem and not related to him. Since grandfather hasn't said anything, then I hope that you will forgive my father for not accepting your request. Our marriage was set by our two grandfathers and since none of them have said to release the marriage, then this marriage will go on. Or else, the people that are trying to release the marriage would be disrespecting their ancestors. I think that within our clan, there aren't any people that would do such a dishonorable thing. Ziyan tilts his head and stares straight at the three elders. Using the dishonorable title, Ziyan forced the elders to be silent. In the strict clan, doing something as blasphemous as disrespecting one's ancestors would be enough for them to lose their spot as an elder of the clan. After being rebuffed by Ziyan, Naylan Yanran couldn't find any argument to retort Ziyan's claim. Her face became ashen and heavily stomping her feet, her princessy nature became apparent. Looking at the young man with disgust, she annoyingly says, Under what conditions will you release the marriage? Were the reparations too little? All right, I can ask my teacher to give you another 3 Che gathering powder. In addition, if you want to, I can let you join faction of Misty Clouds and learn profound Do Che training methods. Is that enough? Hearing the attractive conditions from Naylan Yanran, the 3 elders' breathing started to become heavy. Within the main hall, the younger generation swallowed the saliva. Joining faction of Misty Clouds. God, that's the dream of countless people. After saying all these conditions, Naylan Yanran raised her snow-white chin, like a princess addressing her servants. She waited for Ziyan's response and knew that these conditions were enough to make any young man crazy. Chapter 7. Divorce. Unlike what Naylan Yanran expected, after saying the alluring condition, the young man in front of her started trembling. He slowly raised his head and his delicate and young face was contorted into a fearsome, savage face. Even though Ziyan had endured countless taunts over the past 3 years, even he had a limit. Nalan Yanran's actions had roughly stepped on the final shred of dignity hidden deep within Ziyan's heart. Seeing the vicious face of the young man, Yanran sprang backwards. The young man by her sides took the chance to pull out his sword and coldly stared at Ziyan. I want to kill you." Even though his teeth were clattering, Ziyan's words had an unmistakable killing intent to them. His hands were curled into fists and within his black pupils, furious flames burned. "Yana, you're being rude." At the top of the hall, Zizon was shocked by the reaction of Ziyan and hurriedly quieted Ziyan. The current Z clan wouldn't dare be on the wrong side of faction of Misty Clouds. Even though his fists tightened even further, Ziyan lowered his head. Moments later, he lightly lifts up his head. The difference was that the vicious face that he had displayed earlier had been completely replaced by a calm and impassive face. In the past 3 years, Ziyan had endured countless discrimination and taunts. As a result, Ziyan was now more mature than before. Perhaps his greatest gain from the past 3 years was that he had learned to keep his emotions under control. Looking at the completely different young man, Jie Yi and Nalan Yanran suddenly felt a chill. This kid, if he stays useless, then it isn't a big deal. But if he gains strength, then he will definitely become a dangerous force to be reckoned with, Jie Yi solemnly thought. Ziyan, even though I don't know why my actions have infuriated you thus far, but you should still release the marriage. Slowly letting out a breath, Nalan Yanran pushed her fear and stiffened her face. Remember, my visit to Z clan was permitted by my teacher, the faction leader of faction of Misty Clouds. Pursing her lips, Nalan Yanran said, with a slight hint of helplessness, "You can understand that my visit today is partly coercion, but you should understand that the reality is harsh and nothing is fair. Even though it shouldn't mean much, you should understand the difference between us. We don't have any hope of being together." Hearing the absolute statements of the girl, Ziyan's mouth curved into a sneer. "Lady Nalan, you should understand, in Dojo mainland, a woman going back on her marriage would be embarrass the opposite party in front of everyone. Hehe, I don't really care about being embarrassed, but my father, he's the clan leader. If we accept your request today, then how do you expect him to rule over Z clan? How will Z clan keep a foothold in Wuten City?" Looking at the furious young man, Nalan Yanran's brows furrowed. She peeked at Zizon at the end of the hall. He appeared as if he had just aged by a lot. Seeing that, she felt slightly sorry for her actions and bit her lips. After musing for a moment, her eyes lit up. She whispers, "Today's request, it's a little reckless on my part. So, today, I will temporarily take back my request to release my marriage. But, you must promise me something." "What promise?" "I can delay today's request for 3 years. 3 years from now, you will come to faction of Misty Clouds and challenge me. If I win, then I will release the marriage in front of everyone, and at that time, you would have performed your clan's rites of adulthood, so even if you lose, you won't be affecting your father Zizon or Z clan. Do you accept?" "Hey, when I lose, then, it won't affect the name of my father. But maybe for my entire life, I'll bear the shame of losing." This woman is too cruel. Ziyan felt helpless. He was angry, but he couldn't find a source to vent it. "Lady Nalan, it's not like you don't know the condition of Yana. How do you expect him to challenge you? Insulting him like this, is it fun for you?" Zizon smacked the table and angrily stood up. "Zizon Shushu, when releasing a marriage, there must someone who bears the responsibilities of it. If not for you, I would be releasing the marriage today. Afterwards, I will announce it to the public." After being blocked several times, Nalan Yanran was also getting angry and coldly shouted at Ziyan, "Since you don't want to hurt the name of Zizon Shushu, then accept the challenge. 3 years or now, will you choose the former or the later?" "Nalan Yanran, you don't need to act all high and mighty. The reason behind you releasing this marriage is because you don't think that I, Ziyan, a near cripple, match you, a genius. Forgive me for putting things plainly. Besides your beauty, I don't care about anything else of yours. The faction of Misty Clouds is very strong, I'll admit that. But I am young. I have lots of time. When I was 12, I was a doji, but you, Nalan Yanran, when you were 12, how many duancha did you have? You're right, I might be crippled right now, but since I created miracles 3 years ago, why do you think that I can't repeat such miracles in the future? Why do you think that I can't become the genius that I once was?" Facing the aggressive stance, Ziyan finally erupted like a volcano. His face became completely serious and his words shocked everyone in the main hall. Who would have thought that the quiet young man possessed such a sharp tongue? Nalan's mouth twitched. Even though she was extremely pissed at Ziyan, she couldn't find words to argue against his statements. Ziyan's words were truth. Even though he was crippled now, he was a doji back when he was 12 years old. But Nalan Yanran was only 8 Duan Che at that time. Lady Nalan, because of grandfather Nalan, I'll give you some advice. 30 years east, 30 years west. Don't you dare bully me because I'm poor now. Ziyan's tough words made Nalan stiffen. Yes, what a great saying. Don't you dare bully me because I'm poor now. My son can't possibly be ordinary. At the end of the hall, Zizhan's eyes were lit with vigor and his heavy palms slammed against the table, causing tea to splatter everywhere. Clenching her teeth and staring at the sneering young man in front of her, Nalan became so angry that her head began to feel dizzy. Nalan Yanran had been spoiled since birth and had never been humiliated by someone the same age as her. Her childish voice climbed another pitch. What is your basis for humiliating me? Even if your talent before was unsurpassed by anyone, the you now. You're a cripple now. Okay, I, Nalan Yanran, will wait for the day that you surpass me. Today's release, I won't mention it anymore, but 3 years from now, I will wait for you at Faction of Misty Clouds. If you have the guts, then show me how you've changed your situation. If you defeat me then I, Nalan Yanran, will be your slave for the rest of my life. Of course, if you're still crippled 3 years later, then you better prepare the contract to release our marriage. Looking at the ashen face of the girl, Ziyan ridicules, it won't take 3 years. I wouldn't want you even if you were begging me to become my wife. After saying that, Ziyan ignored the frozen face of Yanran and turned around. Quickly walking forward to a table, he took out a paper and started to write. The ink slowly dropped onto the paper, and finally, his pen stopped moving. Suddenly, Ziyan's right hand reached for a short sword on the desk and pointed the sharp blade at his left hand. As soon as readied the sword, he firmly drew blood from his left hand. His blooded hand pressed down on the white paper, leaving a glaring red mark. Lightly picking up the contract, Ziyan laughed, a laugh of victory. When he walked past Yanran, he smashed the contract on the table. Don't you dare think that I, Ziyan, think highly of some genius wife. This contract isn't a contract to release the marriage, but rather, I am divorcing you from the Z clan. From now on, you, Nalan Yanran, have no relations with the Z clan. You dare divorce me. Looking at the bloody contract on the table, Nalan Yanran's eyes opened wide in disbelief. With her beauty, talent and background, to have been divorced by a small clan's cripple. This sudden turn of events made her think that she was in a dream. Coldly looking at Nalan Yanran's dumbfounded expression, Ziyan turned around and kneels in front of Zizhan. He gave a heavy kowtow, biting his lips, and didn't say anything. Even though Ziyan actually divorced Nalan Yanran, when the events spread out, others might not think that it's the truth. They, who don't know what happened, would think that Nalan Yanran used her tyrannical background for force Z clan to release the marriage. After all, with Yanran's beauty, talent and background, a cripple from Z clan would never be able to match her. No one would think that Ziyan had the boldness to divorce a future faction leader of the Faction of Misty Clouds. Because of that, being Ziyan's father, Zizhan would probably have to endure endless ridicule. Looking at the kneeling Ziyan and understanding the guilty feelings that his son was having, Zizhan helplessly smiled. I believe that my son won't stay crippled forever. Gossip won't stand a chance when the hard facts come out in the future. Father, 3 years from now, I will go to Faction of Misty Clouds and redeem today's shame. With slightly wet eyes, Ziyan did another heavy kowtow and stood up. Without hesitating, Ziyan walked towards the door of the main hall. When he passed Nalan Yanran, Ziyan pauses of a moment and spits out cold words from his young mouth. 3 years from now, I will find you. The shadow of the young man, under the shining sun, extended extremely far. Looking at it, it seemed very lonely. Nalan Yanran's small mouth opened, but no sound came out. She stared at the disappearing back of Ziya and the contract in her hand felt as heavy as a mountain. Ahem, since your goal has been accomplished, please leave now. Looking at the receding young man, even though Zizhan's face was impassive, the hands inside of his sleeve curled into fists so tight that the fingers became a pale white. Zishushu, I apologize for today's event. If you have time in the future, make sure to come visit the Nalan clan. Lightly bowing to the impassive Zizon, Nalan also didn't want to stay. She quickly stood up and went towards the door of the main hall. Behind her, Zhe and the handsome young man quickly followed her. Take the Che gathering powder. Waving his hand, Zizon threw the jade box on the table at them. Zhe quickly caught the falling box and bitterly smiled while placing the box within his ring. Lady Nalan, hopefully you won't regret your actions today. And also, don't assume that with faction of mystic clouds behind you, you can do anything you want. There are a lot of people stronger than Yun Yun. When Nalan Yanran was about to exit the door, a clear girl's cold voice sounded within the hall. The steps of the three paused and they glanced towards the corner where the voice came from, finding a purple-dressed girl slowly flipping a book. The sunlight shined through the window next to her and perfectly wrapped around the girl. From afar, she looked like a heavenly purple lotus blooming, clean and graceful, as if she was from the heavens. As if she felt the glances from the three, the girl picked her head up from the old book and, within the autumn-like eyes of hers, a thin line of golden flame peeked out. Looking at the thin flame within the girl's eyes, Zhe immediately stiffened and a fearful expression crossed his wizened face. His shriveled hands immediately grabbed the confused Nalan Yanran and young man and he fled from the main hall as if he was fearing for his life. Looking at the actions of Zhe, except for a few people, the others all had expressions of confusion. Chapter 8. The mysterious elder emotionlessly leaving the main hall, the frustrated Ziyan followed his daily routine and slowly climbed to the top of the mountain behind the clan building. Sitting at the top of the mountain, Ziyan calmly watched the steep mountain tops far away being shrouded in mist. There, in the mist, was the Jiamur Empire's famous magic beast mountain range. Hehe, power in this world. Without power, you're not even worth some excrement. At least, no one tries to trample on excrement. With shoulders waving up and down, the young man's soft, self-taunting voice echoed across the top of the mountain, filling the air with sadness. Yanking his hair, Ziyan bit down on his lip, allowing the bloody taste to spread in his mouth. Even though he didn't let his emotions get to him in the main hall, the Nalan Yanran's words stabbed at his heart like knives. I will never be insulted like this again. Opening his left hand, which still had the bloody scar from the events of the day, Ziyan's voice was hoarse but firm. Hehe, kid, looks like you need some help. Right when Ziyan pledged his oath, a wizened, strange laugh entered his ear. Ziyan's face changed and he immediately turned around. With a hawk-like gaze, he scanned his surroundings but didn't even find a shadow. Hey, stop searching. I'm on your finger. Right when Ziyan thought that he was hallucinating, the strange laugh aimlessly sounded again. Ziyan's eyes contracted and his gaze fell on his right hand's black ring. You're talking. Enduring his heart's pounding, Ziyan tried to keep his voice calm. Kid, you're quite calm. To not have been scared witless. From the ring, a taunting voice sounded. Who are you? Why are you in my ring? What are trying to do? After calming himself, Ziyan asked the essential questions. Who am I? You don't need to know. I won't harm you. Ha ha ha, after all these years, I finally found someone with a soul strong enough. What luck. Hehe, I should thank you for your offerings over the past 3 years. Otherwise I would probably still be sleeping. Offerings. Ziyan blinked his eyes in confusion. After a moment, his face darkened and chilling words jumped out of his teeth with difficulty. My doche disappearing. You did that. Hey, I had to do that. Kid, don't be mad at me. You fucker. The normally calm and composed Ziyan became enraged like a lunatic. His small face was filled with savagery, and without caring that the ring was the only memento of his mother, he ripped the ring off of his finger and flung it over the cliff with all of his might. As the ring left his hand, Ziyan's mind finally cleared. Hurriedly he tried to catch the flying ring, but the ring had already passed cliff, free falling down the mountain. Staring at the ring disappearing into the mist, Ziyan was stunned for a long time. Finally, his face lost its savagery and calmed. He smacked his forehead, upset. Idiot, that was too reckless. To realize that the culprit of his humiliation for the past 3 years was the ring he always wore, it was unsurprising that Ziyan reacted so violently. After sitting at the edge of the cliff for a long time, Ziyan helplessly shook his head. Standing up, He prepared to go back, but his eyes widened and his finger shakily pointed at the thing in front of him. In front of Ziyan was the pitch-black ring, floating in the sky. But the thing that surprised Ziyan the most was the transparent, wizened figure above the ring. Hey, kid, you don't need to be so mad, do you? I only took 3 years of your doche. The transparent elder smiled at the stunned Ziyan. Ziyan's mouth twitched and he pushing down his anger. He said, Geezer, since you were hiding within the ring, then you should know how much pain you've caused me since you took my doche, right? But with these 3 years of humiliations, you've matured, right? Do you think that 3 years ago you would have had this kind of tolerance and mindset? Ziyan furrowed his brows, but his emotions started to calm down. After the rage, a hint of happiness took over Ziyan. Since he knew why his doche was disappearing, his talent had returned. Thinking about the chance to take off the title of crippled that countless others had put on him, Ziyan felt as if he had been reborn. The detestable elder in front of him didn't look as annoying as before. Some things, after they disappear, would make one start appreciating their value. After losing and regaining it, one treasures it more. Lightly twisting his wrist, Ziyan let out a long breath and said, Even though I don't know who you are, I would like to know if you plan on staying in the ring to steal my doche. If that's the case, then I would ask for you to find a new owner. I can't afford to keep on raising you. Hey, other people don't have as strong of soul perception as you. The elder stroked his beard. Since I already chose to appear, then before you give me permission I won't take your doche. Ziyan rolled his eyes and sneered without saying anything. He had already decided, regardless of anything the elder says, he would not keep that ring by his side. Kid, do you want to become strong? Do you want to be respected by other? Even though Ziyan had already decided to not have anything more to do with the elder, his heart started beating rapidly when he heard those words. I already know why my doche was disappearing, and with my talent, why do I need you to become strong? Letting out a small breath, Ziyan smoothly said. He knew that there were no free lunches in this world. To owe a mysterious person a favor isn't a smart move. Kid, even though your talent is pretty good, you should know that you're already 15, but your doche is only at 3 dwen. I think that I heard that your adult ceremony is next year, right? Do you think that within a year, using your talent and hard work you can get to 7 dwen cha? In addition, the girl who you promised to fight 3 years from now doesn't have shabby talent either. You want to catch up and surpass her. It's not going to be easy. The elder's face that was full of wrinkles blossomed like a chrysanthemum. If you didn't take my doche, then do you think that any of this would have happened? You old fucker. After his biggest weakness was exposed, Ziyan's face darkened once again and he started to curse. After cursing, Ziyan felt a hint of despair. In his current situation, no matter how much he cursed, there would be no effect. The practice of doche required a strong foundation. Back when he was 4, it took him 6 years to get to 9 dwan doche. Even with his talent, getting to 7 dwan che in just 1 year was hopeless. Sighing depressedly, Ziyan glanced at the pretentious elder. The edge of his mouth curled and he asked, Do you have a solution, maybe? The elder vaguely replied, If you help me to get to 7 dwan che in just 1 year, then I'll forgive you for taking my doche for 3 years. How's that? Ziyan probingly asked. Hehe, wishful thinking, kid. If you can't help me, then why should I keep you, someone useless, by my side? You should find another unfortunate person. Ziyan knew that the transparent elder couldn't randomly take doche from other people, so he knew that he had some leverage in the negotiations. You're not even remotely close to a 15-year-old young man. Looks like these 3 years really helped you grow a lot. Did my plan backfire? Looking at the clever Ziyan, the elder paused and then dumbfoundedly shook his head. Ziyan shrugged his shoulders and lightly said, If you want me to keep you by my side, then you should at least have some sincerity, right? What a sharp-mouthed kid. All right. After all, I do need your help. Without another choice, the elder nodded and slowly came to the ground. After examining Ziyan for a while, a treacherous smile spread across his face. But as soon as it appeared, it left, and the elder pondered for a moment before unwilling asking, Do you want to become an alchemist? Chapter 9. Yao Lao, Alchemist. Hearing the elder's words, Ziyan paused before continuing. In the doche mainland, everyone wants to become an alchemist, but is it that easy to become an alchemist? There are so many harsh requirements. Suddenly, Ziyan's voice fell and he raised his head. I met the requirements. Enjoying the shocked yet excited expression that Ziyan showed, the elder stroked his beard slowly. After looking over Ziyan for a few more seconds, he finally said with some helplessness, even though you barely make the cut, I you a favor. Oh, whatever, I'll let this count as the favor returned. Looking at the reluctant elder, Ziyan thought that the geezer was lying about him barely making the cut, but he was too lazy to probe further. Despite his excitement, he still had his suspicions. Even if I make the cut, alchemists are taught by other alchemists. Are you an alchemist? Looking at the suspicious little face of Ziyan, the elder straightened and with pride he said, Yup, I'm an alchemist. Blinking his eyes, Ziyan's gaze at the elder became bright. Alchemists, those are really rare. Mister, if you don't mind me asking, what rank alchemist were you before? Ziyan licked his lips and his young voice was infused with a hint of respect. In Doche mainland, even though alchemists were very rare, there were still differences between alchemists. From low to high, the stages for alchemists range from the lowest, 1, to the highest, 9. The Pil King Guhi that made the gathering che powder that Nalan Yanran offered was a 6th stage alchemist, and within the Jiamoy Empire, he could be considered to be the top alchemist. What stage? Hehe, I don't remember. Hey, kid, do you want to learn it or not? The elder impatiently asked while shaking his head. GravityTranslations.com, of course, I want to. Ziyan didn't hesitate anymore and hurriedly nodded with his small head. Alchemists, even with forces as powerful as faction of Mystic Clouds, were treated with respect and deference. Hehe, you want to? Since you want to, then you should pay your respects to your teachers. The elder sat on a green rock and coiled his legs beneath himself. I need to pay my respects to my teacher. Ridiculous. To not pay your respects and still expect me to teach you all that I know. You're dreaming. The elder rolled his eyes. Looks like the pedantic elder really cared about these student-teacher relationships. Helpless with a dour face, Ziyan could only respectfully pay his respects to the elder to become an honorable alchemist. After watching Ziyan finish paying his respects, the elder finally nodded his head, satisfied. In his voice, a hint of intimacy appeared. My name is Yao Lao. As for my origin, you don't need to know for now so that you don't get distracted. All you need to know is that the Pil King is only trash in my eyes. The edges of his mouth twitching, Ziyan watched the elder's carefree expression and thought, what is this geezer? The famous Pil King Guhi in Jiamoy Empire is only trash. If this spreads, then the whole of Jiamoy would probably assume that he's mentally ill. Lightly taking in a breath and pushing down his shock, Ziyan's eyes darted around and with some droll he asked, teacher, how will you help me to get to 7 Duanche within 1 year? Even though for the past 3 years your Doche has always been declining, your foundation in Doche is much firmer than other people. In Doche training, the foundation is the most important. Later, you'll be able to discover how many benefits these 3 years have brought you. Yao Lao's smile slowly disappeared and he took on a more serious expression. Ziyan was stunned. He was never told that having one's strength taken away would bring benefits. Then when are you going to teach me alchemy? Ziyan steered his thoughts onto the most important thing. To become an alchemist, you need to have Doche of the fire attribute. So, before you become an alchemist you have to at least become a doji and learn a fire attribute Doche method. Ziyan held out his hand and laughingly asked, Fire attribute Doche method. Hehe, teacher, since I'm your student, you should give me a Chia level fire attribute Doche method, right? Hearing that, Yan Lao indignantly scolded Ziyan, really? Do you think that tier stage Doche methods are like potatoes in the ground? How could you say something like that? Geezer, since I've already become your student, you can't possibly let me go into my clan to find Doche methods, right? Our clan's top fire attribute Doche method is only a high 1 level. That's way too shabby for an alchemist. Ziyan's face showed how depressed he was. Brat, I'm your teacher, not a geezer. Hearing Ziyan's disrespectful words, Yao Lao rolled his eyes when he realized that Ziyan didn't care about being respectful to his elders. HMPH, since you're my student, I wouldn't let you practice some shabby methods. Tier stage methods. I don't have them. But I have a method that's a lot stronger than a normal tier stage method. Do you want to learn it? Yao Lao's turbid old eyes suddenly became conspiratorial. Strong stronger than a tier-stage doche method. His heart beats rapidly. Ziyin swallowed some saliva and in his pitch-black eyes, a hint of anticipation could be found. Then what level doche method is it? Lo Huang level. Yao Lao's light laughter made Ziyan's face stiffen. Geezer, you were playing me. A furious voice sounded on the peak of the mountain. Looking at the twisted face of the young man, Yao Lao started laughing. To be able to make the calm Ziyan that mad, he had a feeling of accomplishment. What's strange about that doche method? Watching Yao Lao's bantering face, Ziyan suddenly calmed down. It can evolve. Ziyan's eyes widened and without blinking, Ziyan stared at Yao Lao's face, trying to find a hint that Yao Lao was lying. But after a few seconds, he shook his head. No way. I've never heard of any doche method that can evolve. Who? What do you know? Doche mainland is huge and strange people and things happen all the time. In your limited mind, you haven't even gone outside of Jiamo Empire. There are tons of impossible things that are actually possible. Ziyan paused before saying, then have you ever heard about doche methods that can evolve? Yao Lao's smile stiffened. Because there aren't any other like it, this doche method is unique. It can evolve. Looking at Yao Lao's serious face, Ziyan couldn't help but ask again. It can evolve. Yao Lao seriously nodded. Have you tried it? Oh no. Have other people tried it? Oh no. On Ziyan's forehead, a vein could be seen. With his hands curled tightly, Ziyan tried to resist his impulse to go over and punch the elder. If no one else has ever tried it, then how do you know that it can evolve? It's explained like that on the doche method. There really are such doche methods. His brows furrowed. Ziyan hesitated before saying, can you let me see it? Heh. Looking at the curious Ziyan, Yao Lao's mouth opened, but what came out wasn't what Ziyan was expecting. Never mind. There's no use if you see it now. So why don't you become a doji first before I pass it on to you? Ziyan's outstretched hand paused and after the edge of his mouth twitched for a while, he spat out 3 words. You're ruthless. Happily laughing, Yao Lao ignored the anger-filled pupils of Ziyan and said, our current mission is to get your doche up to 7 Duan within 1 year. Ziyan pushed down his curiosity and anger for the doche method and asked with clenched teeth, how are you going to do that? Yao Lao with a serious face said, when one begins to train their doche, their main focus is to build muscle and strengthen internal che paths so that they have a foundation for when they materialize their doche within their body. Because people at your age have weak internal che paths and can be molded, you need to take the training process step by step and you can't use outside force to boost your training speed or else in the future when your doche becomes stronger, your internal che paths won't be able to withstand the force of doche pushing through the paths and your che paths would burst, which would be when you would die. Ziyan knew this as well as Yao Lao because in the 3 years that he was crippled, his father was very worried and quite a few times he tried to forcibly push doche into Ziyan's body, but every time, at the last second, he would stop so Ziyan knew the stakes involved. Yao Lao glanced at the calm Ziyan and satisfiedly nodded his head. But that only applies to others. You're different. Your internal foundation was already solid and reliable 3 years ago, and since then because of your firm personality, you never stopped training your che. Therefore, your foundation right now, I can say that it is great. So you want to use outside forces to train my che? Like pills, pretty much. But with the toughness of your che paths right now, you won't be able to take the force of any of the pills going through your che paths. Even the rudimentary gathering che powder, you wouldn't be able to use. The rudimentary gathering che powder. Ziyan wanted to roll his eyes again. In Jiamo Empire, a gathering che powder would fetch sky-high prices. But from his teacher, these gathering che powder became the most rudimentary things. The difference between the two left Ziyan stunned. Then your plan. Taking a deep breath, Ziyan recovered and furrowed his brows again. Hehe, since pills are too fierce and can hurt your che paths, we need to use a milder method. Yao Lao smiles and says, tomorrow, prepare for me 3 complete stalks of purple-leaved bluegrass. With the older they are, the better. Also, I need 2 stalks of bone-washing flour. The age of it doesn't matter. Oh right, I'll also need a level 1 wood attributed monster core. These are all low-grade materials so you should be able to get them. Someone's coming. I'll go back into the ring. Also, don't let anyone else know of my existence, including your closest family. After saying that, Yao Lao ignored the stunned Ziyan and jumped into the black ring. The ring shakes a bit and flies onto Ziyan's finger. 3 stalks of purple-leaved bluegrass. 2 stalks of bone-washing flower. I would attribute monster core. Geezer, are you sure that's right? Do you think that I'm some royal prince? These things, added all together, costs over 1,000 gold coin. After a few years of saving money to the point where I would skip meals and never spend on luxury items, I only have 100 gold coins. That's only enough for one level 1 would attribute monster core. Ziyan pointed at the motionless ring and cursed. That's your own problem. Hehe, other people would lust after my nourishing fluids, but all I'm asking is for you to get the money for the material, and you're already crying about that. Yao Lao's taunting laughter sounded within Ziyan's heart. Damn it. The things that alchemists make can only be afforded by rich people. Ziyan helplessly laughed. His allowance each month was only 20 gold coins. This was by no means a small amount. It would be enough for a small normal family to feed themselves for an entire year. But the money that he had was barely enough to buy one of the items that Yao Lao required. This is the difference between alchemists and other people. Oh, looks like I have to borrow it from someone. Sighing a depressed breath, Ziyan slowly regained his composure, and his small face recovered to his normal calm face. Turning his head towards the path up the mountain, he could make out a purple figure climbing the mountain like a spirit. Chapter 10. Borrowing money, tiptoeing on the rocks. Ziyan was like a beautiful purple butterfly with hypnotizing curves as she gracefully scaled the mountain. As she looks upward, her gaze focuses toward the youth standing next to the cliff. Looking at the youth, Ziyan felt surprised. Even though it had only been a couple of hours, she noticed that compared to before, Ziyan has obtained something. When their eyes meet, she finally realized what Ziyan has regained: his own confidence. After 3 years, Ziyan's brilliance has returned at last. Indulging in the transparent lingering on Ziyan's lips to dimples appear Ziyan's pretty face. Looks like Ziyan didn't need Zana to come and comfort him. People grow after experiencing hardships, don't they? Ziyan shrugs his shoulders. She will definitely regret it. Zana curls her lips and says the words as if she were a judge having the final say on a court case. Ziyan lightly smiles, pats his clothes and walks towards her. When he gets near her, looking at Zana, who's about the same height, he glances at the young, but nevertheless pretty face. Suddenly Ziyan feels dizzy, remembering the girl who would be drooling all the time and following Ziyan everywhere. She's so pretty now. Lightly smiling, Ziyan's gaze softens, and he rudely pinches Ziyan's face underneath her shocked look. Zana's grown up. But you turned out fine, not forgetting how Ziyan Zheizhe would be covered with bruises trying to pick fruit from the trees. Stunned at Ziyan's intimate actions, Zana stiffens for a whole second before her pitch black, free of impurities, eyes smiles. When she was still small, Ziyan loved to pinches her cheeks, but ever since the event 3 years ago, he set up an invisible wall next to his heart and pushed everyone out. No matter how hard she tried, she would always be disappointed by the cold and impassive attitude of his. He's back, but it seems like he still considers me to be immature. He's such a log. Zana complains in her heart after an instant. Zana criticizes herself for being too greedy. Zana, for these past 3 years, please don't blame Ziyan Zheizhe for being like that. I was living day by day, but thankfully you were always by my side. Ziyan awkwardly nods his head and apologizes. Zana sweetly smiles. The grievances she had endured for the past 3 years disappeared with the awkward apology. Huh, oh right. Zana, how much money do you have? Letting go of Zana's face, Ziyan does a hollow laugh and asks. In his clan, with the exception of his father, Zana was the only person that was in a good relationship with him. He had just shamed his father this morning, so he could not bear to face his father to ask for money, which is why he asked Zana money. Blinking her crystal clear eyes, Zana is taken by surprise. Ziyan Zheizhe needs money, yes. I want to buy some items, though I'm a bit short. Ziyan felt embarrassed. This was the first time he borrowed money from a girl. Looking at the usual frigid Ziyan now in distress, Zana looks at a completely different person. Covering her mouth and smiling cutely. I have more than 1,000 gold coins, is that enough? If not. While speaking, Zana's fingers behind her swiftly flick and a purple gold card suddenly appears between her fingers. On the card are 5 different waves of color. 5-wave purple cold card. In Docha mainland, you have to be at least a Doling if Doji is first, Doling is fourth, to have the honor of using this type of gold card that represents their rank. Of course, some special powers also have the privilege of getting the card. That's enough, that's enough. Happily nodding his head, Ziyin forcefully tried to stop himself from pinching Zana's cute face. Don't worry, I'll pay you back later, Ziyin promises while patting his chest. You don't need to pay me back. Zana pouts and quickly hides her purple gold card. Let's go. It's almost night now. Tomorrow I'll bring you to Wu-Tang City for a walk. Ziyin waved towards the girl and cheerfully descended the mountain. Standing still, Zana delightfully looked at the youth who had regained his boldness from 3 years ago. Smiling softly, she murmured, Nalan Yanran, should I despise you or be grateful to you? Early morning, the sun shone warmly through the window onto the body of the cross-legged youth in meditation. After meditating nearly all night, Ziyin inhaled deeply. A translucent white airflow that was visible to the naked eyes went through his mouth and nose and into his body, nursing his body and bones. White light shined from his eyes as he suddenly opened his eyes. Ziyin stretched himself and passionately says this is exactly this feeling. After 3 years, the feeling of chair has returned. He slowly gets out of his bed, exercises himself a bit, before starting changing. From outside the room, Zana's voice softly carries inside. Ziyin Zheizhe, still sleeping, she arrived here so early. Shaking his head, Ziyin turned around and then searched his drawers. Finally, with reluctance, he pulled out a small box and carefully opened it. He narrowed his eyes from the glint of silver inside that box. And this is my entire savings. Holding his money box, Ziyin smiled bitterly while shaking his head. Ziyin gently smiled as he walked out of his room and saw the dazzling girl in front of his door. Zana had changed into a pale green outfit that made her look even more naturally beautiful. She also had a pair of tight pants that stretched across her slender thighs and long legs, emphasizing her curves. With long legs, Zana can be compared to young girls on Earth, full of youthful vitality and seductivity. Of course, she has her special elegance which Ziyin had never seen on any other girl but her. Here, it's what you'll need. Looking at Ziyin exiting his room, Zana smiled and handed him a black card. This is a common card. The maximum it can contain is only 5,000 gold coins. Receiving the black card, Ziyin teases, Little girl, why are you wearing such an attractive outfit? Could it be you're having a date with somebody else? Yeah, this is the first time in 3 years that Ziyin Zheizhe has invited me out. Zana is very flattered, so of course I have to dress up a little. Ziyan's intimate tease made Zana's eyes bend into a shallow crescent shape while smiling coquettishly. Reluctantly shaking his head, Ziyin smiles back happily. They chat while walking together towards the city, and about halfway, they were greeted by some clansmen looking at their affectionate conversation with a strange face. Zana, be it beauty or talent, is the brightest pearl of the young generation in the clan. She usually is friendly to everybody, but under her light smile is indifference. Greetings with her are easy, but to start a long conversation would be very difficult. Ignoring the looks of the other clansmen, Xiongyan quickly leads Zana out of the clan before slowing down and leisurely peeking at the stall on the side of the street. Wu-Tang City lives up to its name of being one of the largest cities in Jiamo Empire by the sheer number of people living in it. Even though the sun was beating down, on the streets were thousands if not tens of thousands of people. There would even be 1 or 2 bizarre races. Maybe it was because of Ziyin beside her, but Zana became a lot more active after she exited the clan. She tugged the reluctant Ziyin into a variety of stall. Her tender laughter made the scorching street a little cooler. When Zana finally got tired, Ziyin finally brought her to the nearby pharmacy. After spending about 900 gold coins, he bought 3 stalks of 20-year purple-leaved bluegrass along with 2 stalks of 5-year bone-washing grass. These were both low-end materials and would be able to be bought at a regular pharmacy. For higher-end materials, Ziyin would have had to find them himself or buy them at an auction, or if he was lucky, in a high-end pharmacy. Looking at the rapidly decreasing funds, Ziyin bitterly smiled. He realized how important money was in Docha mainland. Anyways, he got all of the herbs. All that was left was the level 1 wood attributed monster core